I was in line at the coffee shop when I saw something that made my stomach drop. It was one of those moments where your brain tells you to look away, to pretend you didn't see anything, but your body refuses to listen. Jessica was there. She wasn't supposed to be. She had told me she was at work, said she had a full schedule, back-to-back meetings, and wouldn't be home until late. But there she was, sitting at a corner table, leaning in close to a man I had never seen before. It wasn't the kind of closeness you have with a coworker or a friend, or even some guy you're meeting for business. Her whole posture was different, relaxed, engaged. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. But the worst part, the way she was playing with her necklace, running her fingers over the chain absent-mindedly. She only did that when she was nervous or excited, and I had a sick feeling I already knew which one it was. I should have walked over. I should have confronted her right then and there, called out whatever was happening. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped out of line, turned, and walked out of the cafe before she could see me. I needed time to think, to process. Driving home, my mind was racing. Had it been going on for months, weeks? Was this the reason she had been pulling away, giving me excuses, acting so damn secretive? I had suspected something was off, but I had convinced myself I was imagining it, that I was just being paranoid. But now I had seen it with my own eyes. I spent the rest of the day trying to act normal. I didn't text her, didn't ask how her work was going. I wanted to see if she would lie to my face when she got home, and she did. When she finally walked through the door that night, she was all smiles, acting like nothing was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek, tossed her bag on the counter, and sighed dramatically. "You would not believe the day I had," she said, shaking her head. "Meetings, emails, clients, never friends." I watched her carefully, the way she spoke so easily, like she had been doing it for years, like lying to me was second nature. "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Must have been exhausting." "You have no idea," she replied. She had no idea. No idea that I had seen her. No idea that I knew. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to her, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing. She looked peaceful, like someone without a care in the world. Meanwhile, my mind was tearing itself apart. I had seen her. I had watched her lie straight to my face without so much as a stutter, and that wasn't something you could ignore. By morning, I had made a decision. I needed proof, not just suspicions, not just a single encounter at a coffee shop. I needed something undeniable, something that would rip her web of lies apart. So I started watching. The next few days, I became someone I didn't recognize. I took long lunches from work just to drive past her office. Some days she was there, some days she wasn't. I checked our phone records, something I had never even thought about doing before. One number kept showing up, late at night, early in the morning, during her so-called meetings, a number I didn't recognize. I copied it down. That Friday, she told me she was going out with her friend Amanda. Just a girls' night, she said, slipping on a dress I hadn't seen in months. She took longer than usual getting ready, spritzed on perfume like she was trying to drown in it. "Don't wait up," she added with a little laugh as she grabbed her purse. I waited exactly 15 minutes after she left before I called Amanda. "Hey," I said, keeping my tone light. "Jessica just left for your girls' night. Hope you two have fun." There was a pause. What?" I repeated. "Jessica. She said she was going out with you." Another pause, then lower this time. "I haven't talked to her in weeks." I don't even remember hanging up. My body was already moving, grabbing my keys, shoving my feet into my shoes. I felt ice cold, like my blood had turned to stone. I wasn't just going to find out the truth. I was going to catch her in the act. I drove like a man possessed, not recklessly, no. I was in complete control. Every turn, every lane change, deliberate. The anger, the betrayal, the absolute certainty of what I was about to uncover kept me steady. I called the unknown number just once. No answer. But I didn't need one. I already knew. I didn't know exactly where she was, but I knew her, knew how she thought, knew the places she would go when she wanted to feel special. And sure enough, as I approached the Belmont, a dimly lit upscale bar she used to love, my instincts proved right. Her car was there. I parked across the street and waited. Minutes dragged by, stretching into an hour. I watched people come and go, laughter spilling out into the night air. And then, there she was. Jessica stepped outside, wrapped around him, tall, well-dressed, smug-looking. He had his hand on the small of her back like he owned her, guiding her toward the curb where a black sedan pulled up. She leaned into him, whispering something against his jaw. He grinned, slid an arm around her waist. I felt nothing, not rage, not sadness, just cold, clinical focus. I took my phone out and snapped a picture. Then another one, of her laughing, one of him opening the car door for her, one of her choosing him. I watched her disappear into the car, my wife, my liar, vanishing into the night with a man who wasn't me. And then, I turned the key in the ignition and drove home. I wasn't going to confront her tonight. No. I was going to let her think she had gotten away with it. Let her slip back into our house, into our bed, into her well-rehearsed lies. And then I was going to ruin her. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, staring at the photos I had taken. Every detail burned into my mind, her smile, his hands on her, the way she looked at him. She never looked at me like that anymore. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that stretches, waiting to be filled. I poured myself a drink. Not out of sadness, not out of weakness. I just needed something to mark the moment, the exact second my marriage became nothing more than a waiting game. At 2:17 a.m., I heard the front door open. Jessica walked in like she didn't have a single secret to hide. She didn't even hesitate, just kicked off her shoes, dropped her purse on the counter, and let out a long, dramatic sigh. "God, what a night!" she muttered, heading straight for the fridge. She hadn't seen me yet. Amanda got so trashed, I had to practically carry her to a cab. Full of water and taking a long sip, still blissfully unaware that her world was about to crack open. I waited until she turned around. Her eyes met mine, I saw it, the flicker of panic. "Why are you awake?" she asked. I swirled the liquid in my glass. "How was Amanda?" She smiled, a real, well-practiced smile. "Oh, you know how she is, dramatic, loud, same old Amanda." I nodded like I believed her. "Weird," I said. "I called her earlier." The color drained from her face so fast it was almost impressive. "You what?" she whispered. "I called her," I said. "She said she hasn't seen you in weeks." Jessica froze. Her fingers clenched when, just as quickly, she forced out a laugh. "Oh my God, you scared me for a second," she said, rolling her eyes, shaking her head like I was being ridiculous. "I didn't mean Amanda literally. I meant like a girls' night in general, you know? Just a mix of friends." She was good. The way she adjusted so quickly, the way she looked at me like I was the one making something out of nothing. It was clear she had no idea what was coming. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table. "Who's the guy, Jessica?" She blinked. "What?" I tilted my phone toward her, letting her see the picture of her outside the bar, the way she was pressed against him, smiling like she didn't have a husband at home. Jessica's entire body stiffened. I watched the war play out behind her eyes, the fight or flight response, the calculations. Then she scoffed. Scoffed. "Are you serious right now?" she said. She actually had the audacity to look offended. "You followed me?" I didn't answer. I just waited. Jessica threw up her hands. "Oh my God, this is insane. You're acting like a complete psycho." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "That's rich. I catch you sneaking around, lying to my face, and I'm the problem?" She crossed her arms, tilting her chin up. "I don't have to explain myself to you." And just like that, I knew she wasn't sorry. She wasn't even trying to deny it anymore, because in her mind, she had already won. She thought she had all the power, that I was just some desperate fool clinging to a marriage that had already died. But she was wrong. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. Jessica's confidence wavered. "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. She didn't know it yet, but I was about to make damn sure she never forgot this night for the rest of her life. I didn't drive far, just enough to clear my head, to let the rage settle into something sharp and controlled. Jessica thought she had me cornered, thought I would argue, beg, fight for an ounce of truth she had no intention of giving. But I wasn't playing that game. Not anymore. I pulled into a 24-hour diner, ordered a coffee I didn't plan on drinking, and made a call. "Hello, Amanda. It's me again." Pause. Everything okay?" I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the unease. She already knew. "You knew, didn't you?" I said, my voice calm. "About Jessica? About the other guy?" Another pause, then a long sigh. "Look, it's not my business, but you knew." Amanda exhaled heavily. "I didn't want to be involved. Man, she told me she talked to you, that she just needed time to figure things out." I almost laughed. Figure things out? Like she had tripped and accidentally fallen into another man's arms? "Who is he?" I asked. Amanda hesitated. I don't know his name. I swear she never told me, but it's been a while." My grip tightened around the phone. "How long?" Another sigh. Then quietly. "At least 6 months." 6 months. I let that sink in, let it carve its way through whatever was left of the man who had once trusted his wife. "Sorry, man," Amanda said. "I should have told you, but she made it sound like she had a plan, like she was going to." "Yeah," I cut in, my voice flat. "I'm sure she had a whole plan." I hung up. Jessica wasn't just a liar. She was a calculated liar. She had been weaving this deception for half a year, balancing 2 lives, looking me in the eye every single day, and choosing to keep me in the dark. I sat in that diner for another hour, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I wanted to make her sweat. When I finally walked back through the front door of our house, Jessica was pacing the living room. She spun to face me, arms crossed. "Where the hell did you go?" I shut the door behind me. "Talk to Amanda." Her face didn't change, but I saw the slight shift in her stance, the tension in her shoulders. "You had no right to involve my friends in this," she snapped. I actually smiled. Smiled. 6 months, I said. "That's how long you've been doing this, right?" Jessica's nostrils flared. "I don't have to listen to this." She turned, like she was going to storm off, but I wasn't done. "I'm not asking you anymore, Jessica." My voice was calm, too calm. "I know everything." She froze. Then slowly, she turned back to me. For the first time since this whole thing started, I saw it. Fear. Good. Jessica hated not being in control. I could see it in the way her hands clenched, the way her jaw tightened just slightly. She had spent 6 months managing her little double life, lying, playing the perfect wife, while sneaking around behind my back. And now, in a single night, it was all crumbling. She forced out a short, sharp laugh. "You're being ridiculous." I didn't say a word. I just pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. The pictures. Her outside the bar, her pressed against him, his hand on her back, her looking up at him with that smile. The color drained from her face. "You," her voice faltered for the first time. "You followed me," she whispered. "I didn't have to," I said smoothly. "You're predictable, Jessica." A storm flashed behind her eyes. She hated that. Hated the idea that she wasn't as clever as she thought, that I had figured her out before she could finish whatever little plan she had cooked up. She squared her shoulders. "So what? You're just going to stand there like some detective, waiting for me to confess?" I smiled. "You just did." Jessica's face twisted. "Oh, screw you." She snatched her purse from the counter, like she was about to walk out, like this was somehow my fault. Where are you going? I asked. She stopped, didn't turn around. You going to run to him now? I continued, my voice sharp. Since the game's over? That did it. She spun on me, eyes blazing. You know what? Yeah, maybe I will, she snapped. Because at least he... She cut herself off, but I already knew. At least he makes me feel something. That's what she was about to say. I didn't flinch. Didn't react. Just let the silence stretch. Jessica exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through her hair. This marriage hasn't been working for a long time. You know that. You just don't want to admit it. Now it was my turn to laugh. So, instead of talking to me, you just decided to cheat? I shook my head. Classy. She glared at me. Like you even care. Like you've ever cared. We've been nothing for months, and you tracked me down after 2 years. I cut in, my voice eerily calm. But what I revealed left you stunned. Jessica blinked. She didn't understand. Not yet. But she would. She stood there, gripping her purse so tight, her knuckles turned white. I could see the gears turning in her head, the calculations, the desperate scramble to regain control. But she couldn't. Not this time. You're not making any sense, she muttered, shaking her head. What do you mean 2 years? I leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, watching her carefully. That's how long it's been since I stopped believing a damn word you said. She opened her mouth, then shut it. For the first time that night, she hesitated. And in that hesitation, I saw it, the doubt creeping in, the realization that she had underestimated me badly. I took my time before speaking again, letting the tension stretch between us like a wire, ready to snap. Did you really think I never noticed? I asked, my voice deceptively calm. You think this was the first time I've caught you sneaking around? Jessica flinched, just barely. I knew it. You're lying. She shot back, but there was something different in her voice now, not defiance. Fear. I tilted my head, watching her in silence. Then she did something. Unexpectedly, she laughed. It was bitter sharp, like she was trying to convince herself she was still in control. So what? She scoffed. You're saying you've known this whole time? That you've just been sitting around, waiting for me to slip up? I smiled. Not exactly. Jessica's breathing had changed, shorter, more erratic. Her confidence was cracking, and she knew it. You see, Jess, I continued, I started noticing things a long time ago. The way you'd leave the room to take certain calls, the sudden late nights, the little inconsistencies in your stories. And at first, I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. But then, I trailed off, shaking my head. Then I started keeping track. Her eyes widened. Every excuse, every lie, every unexplained meeting or girls' night that didn't quite add up. I pulled my phone out again and scrolled. You were sloppy, Jess. Thought you were clever, but really, you just got comfortable. Jessica swallowed hard. You're bluffing. I tapped my screen. February 12th, I said. You said you were with Amanda, but your credit card statement says you were at the Marriott downtown. I flicked to another note. March 4th, left for a work trip but never checked into the hotel your company booked for you. Another flick. April 22nd, supposedly had dinner with your mom, but she called me that night asking if you were okay because she hadn't heard from you all week. Jessica visibly paled. I took a slow, deliberate step toward her. And here's the best part, I murmured. I wasn't going to say anything, not at first. I was just watching, waiting. She shook her head, eyes darting around the room like she was trapped. Why? If you knew, why didn't you? Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. I cut in. And you didn't disappoint. Jessica's breath hitched. I could see it sinking in now, the depth of her own betrayal, the fact that she hadn't been as smart as she thought. You thought you had me fooled, I said quietly. But all you did was dig your own grave. Her lip trembled. For the first time all night, she looked genuinely afraid. Good. Jessica was unraveling. I could see it in the way she clutched her purse like a lifeline, the way her breath came quicker, shallower. She thought she was playing a game, that she was always one step ahead. But now she realized she had been chasing her own tail the entire time. "You're lying," she whispered, but the strength was gone from her voice. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Am I?" She shook her head, trying to recover. "No. If you really knew, you wouldn't have waited this long. You would have confronted me months ago." I laughed. "God, you still think you have control." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Jessica, you don't get it, do you?" I took a slow step toward her. "You were never in charge of this," I said. "I was. You weren't lying to me. You were performing for me, and I let you." Her face twisted, her mind scrambling for an escape. "This is insane. I didn't even do anything," she whispered. I raised an eyebrow. "So that wasn't you outside the Belmont? That wasn't you letting some guy put his hands all over you?" Jessica's mouth opened, but no words came out. I kept going. "You know what's funny? You probably thought I'd break down. That I'd scream, cry, beg you to stay. But the truth, Jessica?" I took a slow step toward her. "I don't give a damn about you anymore. Haven't for a long time." That hit her hard. Her eyes widened like I had slapped her. "That's not true," she breathed. I laughed. "Oh, but it is." Her whole body went rigid, like she had been caught in a trap she didn't see coming. "So what now?" she spat, trying to sound defiant. "You want a divorce? Fine. I don't care." I smirked. "Oh, sweetheart, you're not getting off that easy." Jessica hesitated. "What does that mean?" I grabbed my phone and tapped the screen a few times. Then I turned it toward her. A draft email. Her face drained of color when she saw the recipient's name, her boss. "I've been working on this for a while," I said, feigning casualness. "It's all in here. How you used company funds to book hotels for your little getaways. How you snuck off on business trips that weren't real. How you spent work hours having long phone calls with your boyfriend." Jessica's breathing turned shallow. "You wouldn't," she whispered. I tilted my head. "Wouldn't I?" Her mask was gone now. No more fake confidence. No more acting like she had control. Now she looked desperate. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "If you do that, I'll lose everything. My job, my reputation." I put my phone down on the counter between us, hovering my finger over the send button. "Then let's talk about how this ends," I said, my voice dead calm. Jessica swallowed hard. She knew she had just lost. Jessica stood frozen, her face pale, her body tense like a trapped animal. Gone was the smugness, the arrogance, the fake confidence. Now there was only one thing left, fear. She finally understood. This wasn't just about cheating. This was about consequences. Her lips parted, but no words came out. At first, I could almost hear her mind racing frantically, searching for a way out. A way to flip this back on me, to manipulate, to control the narrative. But there wasn't one. "You don't have to do this," she finally choked out. I smirked. "Oh, but I do. You see, Jess, you don't get to rewrite the story this time. You don't get to play the victim or pretend this is just some sad mistake. You spent 6 months making a fool out of me, and now, I'm just returning the favor." Her breathing was uneven now. "If you send that, I lose everything. My job, my reputation. Just like you were willing to throw away our marriage." I cut in, my voice cold. "Just like you thought you could sneak around behind my back and never pay for it." She took a shaky step toward me. "We can fix this," she pleaded. "We don't have to destroy each other." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You already destroyed this," I said. "I'm just making sure you don't get to walk away unscathed." Jessica's jaw clenched. She was realizing, maybe for the first time in her life, that she wasn't the one in control. That she had miscalculated everything. I picked up my phone again, my finger hovering over the send button. So here's the deal, I said smoothly. You don't get a choice anymore. You're leaving this house tonight. You don't get to play house with me anymore. You don't get to keep pretending. And if I ever hear your voice again, if I even sense that you're trying to make this harder for me, this email gets sent. Understood? Jessica swallowed hard. Then, finally, she nodded. I stepped back, gesturing toward the door. Then start packing. For the first time in our entire marriage, Jessica actually listened. Jessica packed in silence. No screaming, no fake apologies, no last-ditch attempts to manipulate me. She knew it was over. She knew she had lost. I watched her from the doorway, arms crossed, taking in every moment. Every time she hesitated, every time her hands shook as she shoved her clothes into a suitcase, every glance she stole at me, probably hoping I'd break, that I'd give her some mercy. I didn't. She zipped up the suitcase and straightened, exhaling sharply like she was trying to steady herself. Where am I supposed to go? She finally asked. I shrugged. Not my problem. Her eyes flashed with something, anger, frustration, maybe even a little bit of regret. Not for what she did, but for how it ended. She had spent months living two lives, convinced she could keep both, that I'd always be here waiting while she ran off with him. And now she had nothing. She grabbed her bag and moved toward the door. Then, at the last second, she turned to face me. You're really doing this? She asked, her voice a mix of disbelief and desperation. I smiled. I already did. Jessica's lips pressed into a tight line. She opened the door, stepped outside, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt free. I waited until I heard the sound of her car pulling away before I picked up my phone again. Then, with one final flick of my finger, I deleted the email. Not because I forgave her. Not because I cared. But because Jessica wasn't worth any more of my time. She thought she had power over me, thought she could cheat, lie, manipulate, and that I'd always be there, always be her safety net. But she was wrong. I had already won.